All right, and welcome back. This is a continuation from the previous video where we started up and we have our animation going. We started up by our Unity. We have our animation going. If we were to run our application right now, or our program, you will be able to see, I'm on pause right there, you will be able to see our character in idle mode. We want to now go ahead and allow that character to transition from idle to, let's say, like a walk or a run. And to do that, we're going to go over to our character animations. And you should already have this set up from the previous videos. We can see we have an idle, we have a player, an idle and a walk, and we have this controller player. I'm gonna also create a run. So I'm gonna go back to my sprites. I'm gonna go to characters, and then I am going to search for the run. And I have this run right here. You'll see there's this run 6. I'm going to select the image from 6.0 to 6.5, which is all of the run for this particular animation. And I'm going to right click on that. I'm going to go to create, and then I'm going to go here to animation. Then you should see this new animation created, and I'm going to type run. It says run animation. I'm going to drag that run animation over to the animations folder, since that's where I put all my animations. And I capitalized this. I think for idle I did not capitalize before, so I can right click on this and rename that. And oh, that's already capitalized. All right, so that's fine. Everything's even. All right, so now I'm going to take this run and I'm going to drag it over here into my animator view. Now what I want to do from here is I want to make a transition from the idle to the run. The way we do that is we right click on our idle, make transition, and once you do that you'll get this little connector. I'm going to select on the run. Now I have a connection or a transition from the idle to the run. When you click on these, you'll see the information over here to the right. You can adjust the speed and the motion and time and that sort of thing. The one thing you want to make sure you do now is we want to go ahead and create, select on this little arrow here. That's going to dictate how our transition works. So we don't want this right the way it is currently, because right now there's a slow transition from the idle to the run, you know, that sort of thing. What we want to happen is for it to be much faster. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the settings, and I'm going to take away this exit time. I don't want any exit time, meaning delay between the idle and the run. I don't want any transition duration here. I just wanted to go straight from the run into the idle and from the idle to the run. And I don't want any exit time here. Exit time simply means that once it gets to the run, it's going to run one time and it's going to rush back over to the idle. And we don't want that either. Something like that would be good for a one-shot deal. Let's say the character slides, but you don't want them to keep sliding. You want to get right back to the walk or the run, whatever they're doing. You would go ahead and do something like this, and we're not doing that right now. All right, so now I have everything set up. Now the only thing I need here is to set up a parameter for this, because if you look down here, it says transition needs a parameter or an exit time to be valid. This is not a valid transition. So to do that, we go over here to, you probably see these layers here, but we want to go to the parameters here. I'm going to click on the plus. I'm going to go to Boolean, and Boolean simply means true or false. I'm going to do something called is running, and I'm using camel casing here to type that, so lowercase I and uppercase R. Now, when this is nothing here, when this is not selected, that means false. If it's selected, it means true. So if it is running, if the running is true, go from the idle into the run. If the running is false, go from the run. Stay into the idle. If it's false, sorry. If it's false, stay into the idle. If it's true, go to the run. Basically, that's what it means. Now we need one that goes the opposite way. We want to right click on this run, make transition, and we're going to go right back to that idle, and now we have a transition from the run to the idle. So here I'm going to select on this. I'm going to do the same thing that I did before and remove that. And now what I want to do is go to this first arrow, and I'm going to add that transition. I'm going to hit the plus, and it automatically puts the transition that we created here, because we only have one parameter here. And right now it's true. If it is true, you're going to go from idle to the run. Now, over here, guess what we have to do? We have to put that parameter there, but not if it's true, if it's false. If it's false, if run is false, go back to idle. So let's see this work. We're going to run into an issue, and I want you to see it first before we do anything. So I'm going to hit run here. And right now, running is false. But if I were to click on this, oh, first let me unpause that. Right now, it's in the loop. If I were to make running true, you see it runs, but then it stops, right? And so that's the issue that we're running into here. You get it? Running into? No, horrible joke. I know. Don't turn it off. I know that was a bad joke. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to the running animation here, and I'm going to put loop time, and I'm going to put that to loop time, and I want it to continuously loop. So now let's look at it now. Okay, so let me run this again. And send pause. Let me unpause that. So now it's in the running animation because I have true here. When I uncheck that, it's in a loop situation. And if I run it, I hit is running to true, it's now running again. So now we have a transition between idle and run. And you can make as many transitions as you want, from idle to run to walk to attack to whatever. It's just that easy to do. So now let's move on from here. Now that we have him running in place and he's idling, we can now move on. And it's important to see this happen, because right now I am physically clicking on this and turning it off, right? But this is what we'll be doing inside of our C# code. We'll be making it run or not making it run, depending on what button was clicked. So a good idea for you to do on your own is to now make an is jumping. Now, it's going to be the exact same way as you did the running. For instance, the walking, right? If I wanted to make the walking, I'll do something like this. And I would click from here, right click, make that transition, make this transition here. Click on the arrows. I want to remove these transitions here. And I'm just going through this very rapidly because you already saw me do it. So it's not something that's not familiar to you. I'm going to do that for both of these. And from here, we got to make our parameters. So I'm going to go over here, right click. I'm going to make a Boolean, and I'm going to call that is walking. From there, I go here, from the idle to the walking. So I will say here is walking, and if is walking is true. And over here, from the walking to the idle, let's select this, is walking is false. So now we have these two transitions. And you can make more transitions, but this is basically how it's done. And then you make your parameters, and then you move forward. Now, I would say go ahead and do your jump, because the character has to be able to jump, maybe duck, maybe fire, shoot, something along those lines, and just have fun with it. Go through all of these and then make it the way your character, whatever cool thing your character does, maybe shoots fireballs or, icicles or whatever it might do, burst into flames, whatever it might do, explode, die, all those sort of things your character can do, roll, blink, question, talk, because there's dialogue sometimes in games. So you could do all of that here right off the bat, and now you know how to do that. So let's quickly see how this works. If I were to hit play, unpause that, he's in there. Now he's walking, and remember the walking stopped because we didn't put it as a loop. So let's go ahead and stop this right here. I'm going to go here to the walk animation and make that loop time. And I'm going to run it again. Now, you're asking why my game is stopping, because I have an error down here. I'm going to fix that. Don't worry about it. It's basically with a texture that I have on here that I shouldn't have on here. So right now it's running. And now, he's in run mode because, he's in walking. That's walking. I'm going to uncheck that. It went back to the idle. Then I hit the running. And when I uncheck it, it goes back to the idle. I don't know. The running and the walking looks almost exactly the same. But you get the idea. So now what we want to be able to do, in order for our character to be able to run on this platform, we want to be able to add a collider to our tile maps. So go over to the grid, and this right here, if I let me go over to the scene view. Okay, so this right here, if I turn this off and on, you can see which one is the background and which one is sort of the foreground, the base, you know, where the platforms are. So I want to select on that tile base right there, and I'm going to go here to add component, and I'm going to search for tile map collider 2D. So I put a tile map collider 2D. So now what we want to be able to do is add a collider to our character. So I'm going to go here to this, my main character, and I'm going to add a rigid body. Not a collider, rigid body, sorry. We're going to add a rigid body 2D to our character so that way it can use gravity. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag my character up here. So after adding the rigid body 2D to my character, if I were to hit play, it's just going to fall through the ground. So watch, it's just going to go through the ground. It's not even connecting to the colliders or anything that we put onto our platforms. And if I were to select the platform over here and I were to remove, uncheck this renderer, you can see how the platform is all there, right? And so what I can do here in order to have my character use the dynamics that's automatically connected to the character because of the rigid body is I have to add a collider to the character. So I'm going to select the player and I'm going to put a component on here. I'm going to add a component. I'm going to put capsule collider 2D, make sure it's 2D, otherwise it won't work. I can leave all of that the same. Now when I run this, you'll see him now fall onto the platform. Boom. But he's turning in the circle, but that's pretty funny. And there you have it right there. I'm going to edit this collider. Go over here to the collider, capsule collider 2D right here. And I'm going to hit edit collider. And I'm going to drag these control points closer. And I'm going to make it about the size of the character. Something like that. So now to prevent that rolling, we're going to go to the rigid body. And I want to go down here to constraints, and I'm going to stop it from rolling on the Z-axis. So let's run this again. And there we have it. Now, one of the things we got to make sure that we have now that we're moving forward here is we got to make sure we have our input system set. So I'm going to go to Windows and Asset, Package Manager right here. I can go to Unity Registry, and I'm going to type input here. And I want to make sure that I have this input system installed. And as you see, I don't have it installed, so I'm going to click on Install for the input system. I'll pause this until this is done. Okay, so you want to click Yes on this warning, and it's going to reboot. And once it restarts, we'll continue. Let me save everything, hit save, and then I am going to pause this until we get back. Okay, so once that's done, I can go ahead and close this down, and I'm gonna find my player, and I am going to add an input. But what I want is a player input. Now, the first thing I need to do is create actions. I need a place to save these actions. So I'm going to put up my actions inside of my project. I'm going to right click and create a folder called actions. You can put yours anywhere, but I'm going to put mine in a folder called actions and save that. So now let me go to my actions here. I have this 2D platformer action. And you can see inside of that, it has all these actions there. So one thing you'll see that as soon as I made those actions, this window actually popped up. And these are the actions that I currently have. So right now we have a move, look, fire, and we may want to jump for later. Like I said earlier, we want to set up that jump animation. So I'm going to click on the plus here, and I'm going to put jump here. Now for the jump, there's a binding here. We want to bind it to a key. So from here, I can easily bind this to a key. I want a keyboard and mouse, right? I want to go here, and I can select something, but I can click on listen. It's listening for key press. So I'm going to hit on the space bar, and I'm going to just select that right there. Now you could add more here, like this is space bar for the keyboard on your computer. We are done with this one. I'm going to save that. And so now I'm going to go right back to my character into the input system. And I'm going to open this input system settings right here. When I do that, I'm going to get this image that pops up. From here, I'm going to create a settings asset. Click on that. And I'm okay with that. I can close that. So if you look at down here, we see all of these events, you know, these behaviors that it sends on navigation, on submit, on cancel. We can use all of these on click. We can use all of these in our code on right click. So we can use all of these on fire, on jump, on look. So it's already, this is all set up for us, which is excellent. So all of this is from our input system. Now over here to the right, you see here's the input system it created. And I have this folder called actions. And I think I'd rather call this input system because that's basically what it is. So I'm going to right click on this action. I am going to rename it to input systems. And what I want to do is go back. I'm going to go back here. It was in the assets because when I created that input system from here, from the settings, it automatically put it in the main assets folder, and I want it in my folder inside of the input system. So that's up to you. You know, that's neither here nor there for the actual functionality of it, but you know, for organizational purposes, I'd rather do it this way. And so just to be clear here, if I were to go back here, I'm going to double click on this 2D platformer input system, and I go here to jump. Remember, we made this jump, right? And we put this jump on the space bar. So that's why when we go here, I'm going to go back to dude. Down here, you can see that's why it has the on jump behavior. If we were to make something else, it would automatically add it here for us to access in code. All right, so now for the fun part, I guess. Let's start making some code and scripting this. So here inside of my folder, I'm going to right click. I'm going to create a folder, and I'm going to call that folder scripts. I'm going to double click inside that folder, and here's where I'm going to make my script to make my character run and use those the input system. So I'm going to right click here, create an C# script, and it's going to be player move, or I can say player movement. It's up to you. Yeah, player movement script is fine, or player move script. Go ahead and click on that, and it's going to automatically open it. If it doesn't, go ahead and double click it. Inside of the script, I'm going to take this player movement script, and I'm going to drag it onto the player over here inside of the component, inside of the inspector. So I'm going to drag it right under there, and now I have my player movement script connected to the player itself. And the other thing I want to be able to do is convert this player now into a prefab. Right now it's just a regular game object. So if I were to try to change the character in a scene, I would have to try to get the character all over again, and it won't be the same character, blah, blah, blah. It's a whole mess. And one of the major things in Unity is using prefab. So that way, in essence, it's the same game object that you drag in. For instance, if I were to duplicate this right here, this game character right here, and I were to drag him over here, these are two different objects. They're not the same. Meaning, if I were to change one, this one is going to remain whatever it is. And if I were to change anything in here, this one will be completely separate, right? So what I want is the same game character, no matter when or where I drag it and alter it. So it changes across all of the characters. And so I'm going to drag this dude player, go down here. Do I have a prefabs folder? No, I don't. So I'm going to right click, create folder, prefabs. And you can organize your folders by player, by items, that sort of thing. But because this is such a small game, I'm not going to have any items, prefabs. Maybe, it's just a tutorial for educational purposes. But you do want to categorize your prefabs. All I need to do is drag this player and drag it down here. And now you'll see this turned a color. And then we have the prefab here. So now, if I were to drag this player here, this player and this player is the same. Meaning if I change anything on one of them, I can hit down here, override, and it will change on all of them no matter what scene they're in, which is perfect. So now let's go ahead and go to the code. So I can go back here to my scripts, and I'm going to double click on that movement script. It probably already opened for you. If it didn't, that's okay. Going to pause it till that loads. Oh, there we go. I didn't even have to pause it. So here I'm going to remove this comment, and I'll remove this comment. We should probably know a little bit about that by now, that this right here loops over and over and over. This is your game loop, right? So it's constantly updating. And this is what happens when the game first starts. In C#, this is in essence, not really, but in a way, it's acting as what's called a constructor, the function that runs right when this thing opens up. Now, because we're using the new input system, which makes things a lot easier for us, we have to go ahead and include that here. So we're going to put using, and we're going to put Unity Engine right here, dot input. And you see it's grayed out because we're not actually using it right now, and that's what we're about to do. So now the first thing we want to do, because we're dealing with X and Y, we're not dealing in 3 dimensions, we're just dealing in 2 dimensions. So up, that's a horizontal and vertical. We want to store that in a vector 2D. So we're going to create a variable, and it's going to be a vector 2D type. And we can call that variable input. Move input, that's okay. Yeah, I guess move input. That's fine. Yeah, we can call that move input. So from there, we can go ahead and go down here into our on move event, so that whenever the characters move, this fires, right? So I'm going to go back here and show you something inside of our dude, inside of our input, player input. And if I go down here, you see this on move event, right? So we're connecting into that. We're connecting into this. So whenever this is fired, we're going to do something. So back here, we just go ahead and type void on move, capital M. Close that. Put those brackets there. Now, this on move, what we want to be able to do is take this variable and take whatever comes into this on move and put it into this variable. And the reason why we want to do that, because this is a variable for our entire class, meaning you can see this start, this update, and this move are functions. And whatever variables inside of these functions only is accessible inside these functions. We want something like this move input to be accessible to everything inside of our entire class. So that's why we put it up here and not inside of a function. So I want to be able to take the input that comes in here and put it in here so I can use it in my whole function. So I go here and I'm going to take the input that comes through this call here, and it's an input value, and I'm just going to call that value. So that means whenever this is fired, this information is coming through, right? And I want to take that information and I want to add it to this. So I'm going to say move input equals value, like that. Now, the reason why this isn't working is because you want to look down here, cannot explicitly convert type Unity Engine input system input value to Unity Engine vector. Means I'm trying to take this, which is an input value, and put it into a vector 2D. This is a vector 2D and this is an input value. So that tells us we need to get the vector 2D from this. So I'm going to go to that value. I'm going to hit dot and I'm going to hit get. I'm going to then type here, I want to get a vector 2D, and this should remove our error. So now we have a vector 2D into a vector 2D. So now, because this script is on the character, we always have to remember the context. This script is on the character. And so in order to really get a hold of this character, and we want to get a hold of the rigid body 2D because we want to be able to get this character to run using that rigid body 2D, to jump, to whatever we want it to do. So I'm going to create a rigid body. I'm going to create another variable, and I want it to be a rigid body, but I want it to be a rigid body 2D. Oops, 2D. And then I'm going to call that my rigid body. And you can say my rigid body 2D, but because that's just the name, it's up to you. So now I want to instantiate this rigid body, or actually, I want to take that rigid body and I want to just put the character's rigid body on top of this, or inside this variable. So I'm going to take the character's rigid body and put it inside this variable when everything starts. So as soon as this starts, I want to do that. So I'm going to take this variable here and I'm going to say that equals, and I'm going to get a component from the character itself. And what kind of component am I going to get? It's going to be rigid body 2D. So now as this updates, remember update, it's looping over and over every frame. This is going over and over. So this is where we're going to check to see what button was clicked, if the character's running, if they're not running, so on and so forth. This is basically, not basically, it is the game loop. So I'm going to work a little bit backwards here because I'm using a Visual Studio IDE and it can help me out with this. Normally, if I want to make a function, I just start typing the function, right? But let's work a little backwards here. I'm going to go here and I'm going to type, because I want to make a run function. I'm going to type run here, which does not exist. Hold on. So this function does not exist. As you can see, there's the red there. So I'm going to put my mouse over here, and I'm going to see this little light. I'm going to select that light, and I'm going to put generate method run. And now what you see here is it automatically created that method for me, so I don't have to type it out. So let's try something fairly simple here inside of this run. Let's say my rigid body. And we're going to say the velocity on that rigid body. And that velocity will equal move input. All right, so let's see what this does. I'm going to go back to the Unity. I'm going to hit run, play. And now let's see what happens. So I'm hitting my mouse button. As you can see, he's moving. So we got our character to move. So right now, this is really not, I mean, even though it's colliding with the ground, this is not, we don't want our character just floating around in space and that kind of thing. The character is falling, but it's falling very slowly because it's moving in all directions. So we don't want that actually to be the case. What we want, I am first going to create a variable, vector 2D. And that vector 2D, I'm going to call player velocity. Yeah, that should be a good name. And that's going to equal a new vector 2D. Now, if I go ahead and just accept this right here, this the movement input X, movement input Y, the same thing's going to happen. The character's going to be floating around and slowly moving, right? So what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to have the character move at a particular speed that I want, And so I'm going to create a variable called run speed so I can change the speed in which the character can run. Right now it's just X, right? So I'm going to create a variable called run speed and add that here, so that I can say, okay, I want the character to run this fast, that fast, depending on what they get. You know, they might get some power-ups and make them run faster. So I'm going to go up here and add another variable, and it's going to be a serialized variable, a serialized field called run speed, and it's going to be a float, right? Now I'm going to start that off as 8. So it's a float. So I'm going to take that run speed, and I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to multiply the X by the run speed. So that's going to give me the speed that I want here. And to stop it from floating around, I don't want the movement input Y, because that's, again, that's going to be the input that I put in there, and it's going to be constantly floating around. What I actually want is to take the rigid body that I currently have, which is my rigid body, the one that we got up here on the character, and I want the current velocity that's on that character, and I want the current velocity Y. So this right here should do everything that we need. The only thing we need to change here is this input here. We don't want that there. We want the my rigid body velocity, and we want that to be player velocity that we just now created. So that should work. That should stop us from floating around, and that should give us a little bit better feel of the game. Go back here. Hit play. And now we see our character is able to run and do all these other things. We didn't put any colliders onto the objects here. And right now he's running pretty fast. We could change all that up. And if you notice, when I turn left, when I go backwards, he only just runs backwards. So I want to be able to flip the character to turn the opposite way when I run the opposite way. But at least we have something happening here that's equivalent to, you know, some kind of a game. So what I want to try to do here, I'm going to go here back to my character, and I am going to go to my player movement script, and I'm going to change that 8 to something like 4. And I'm going to run that or play that. And now he doesn't run as fast and as crazy, right? So he's not flipping around that way. So the only thing I think I need to do right now is get the character to make a left and a right. And perhaps we'll do, we'll carry on with the next video and make the character jump. But this should give you a really good understanding of how to get your game started. Get up to this point, you're doing very well. And in the next video, what we'll do is we'll solve some of our issues as far as the character floating around when they, when it falls. We can make it rapidly fall. We can just keep it that way. And we want to allow the character to turn to the left when we hit the left mouse button, and go to the right when I hit the right mouse button, and get the character to jump when we hit the space bar. Hopefully this video was helpful to you. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys next time.